Good Sunday afternoon, everybody. Meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center right now, coming on the air for a severe thunderstorm warning in towards southeastern Georgia, portions of Glenn County until 4 o'clock right now anyway. I may get extended past that, but we're seeing some damaging winds possible, some 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts there, and even, a threat for some quarter-size hail as well toward these areas near I-95. I know folks traveling for that Memorial Day weekend. Really need to be aware of this. So this is some pretty hazardous looking weather. I've even seen a little bit of weak rotation, it would appear here in some of these recent scans on the Doppler as I switch over to the other mode. This mode's trying to say hail could be closer to 2 inches. That's probably a little overdone, but definitely could have some hail an inch or even a little bit more in diameter. I know we're seeing some weak rotation here within the Doppler algorithms as we're looking at things. You can kind of see that around the Dock Junction area. So we need to be mindful of that here. I know downtown Brunswick, not necessarily in the warning, but points northward are here. So we have, as I go ahead and broaden the view a little bit and move the map up a bit, I know you see a warning north of our area toward Darien. Out of the Charleston Weather Service, that's not in our covered zone, but Glenn County is, and we have St. Simon's Island as well as Dock Junction, over towards St. Simon's Island Village, Country Club Estates, Sea Island, and Boys Estates there underneath this warning. So need to be mindful of this here this afternoon, and this is not the only storm here that we have to keep kind of watching. There is a marginal risk for severe weather around, and I'll go ahead and show that to you on our other source here. You'll be able to kind of see what I'm talking about with things. This is, a pretty active afternoon. We had some strong storms around the Tallahassee zone earlier on. We had quite a few advisories, not quite meeting the criteria for a severe thunderstorm warning, but you see here that dark green, that's a marginal risk for severe weather. Not really for tornadoes, but we do need to watch, for a quick spin up sometimes around the coastal zones. You can have something like that happen here in this pattern, but there is a hail threat and a wind threat here, so just stay tuned for the latest. I know in areas that are not getting the storms, it's quite a bit warmer, so sometimes you do want some storminess to cool you down. You want the rain because you are in drought-type conditions even, but you don't want the severe weather. You don't want the lightning, obviously, as people could be outside. And I know this is a strong storm here right along the coast that we've been watching toward Crescent Beach there. There's not a warning on that as we were looking at things down there. But we've been watching it in terms of, the action with it. I know not a severe thunderstorm warning, but there is a marine warning. And actually right at the coast, as it was getting off the coast there, we did get a gust to about 56 miles an hour, so it could have, in some regards, maybe actually needed a warning, as it was right on the edge of severe criteria. As it was getting off the coast, it really strengthened. I noticed that right when it was getting over toward the coastal waters, it really strengthened here, but by then it would be almost kind of too late to issue a warning because it had that uptick here, and we just got to watch out in Georgia, and make sure that doesn't really strengthen, because if it already strengthens from what looks to be severe, then we could see something that really is pretty nasty, and then, you could even get some type of spin to enhance. But as we look at this here over the last little bit, rotation tracker, we see some rotation in the coastal waters. There could be a water spout here that's been prevalent at points. I don't see it on that latest scan, but you have, the notch on this may have had some hail try to develop right at the coast there too, as we're looking at things. I know Peace-side hail reported in St. Johns County around 3:13 this afternoon in the Bakersville area. That's out here, though, with this storm. Again, just kind of interesting to see that here in the grand scheme of things as we're tracking the overall situation. So I know that storm there right at the coast, just, you really don't want to be in the water right now around Crescent Beach because of all that dangerous lightning. Just whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here this afternoon. I was around the Summer House community, Crescent Beach, a 56-mile-an-hour gust. So, just got to be really careful in these adverse conditions sometimes. As we're looking at, it's toward east of 95 there. Again, not a warning on it, mostly in the coastal waters, but it was definitely on the edge of needing a warning there as it was getting off the coast. I mean, again, really upticking as it went off toward the east there and, getting further away. But I also have a strong storm in Lafayette County right now, 40-mile-an-hour gust and hail to about a 1/4 inch in diameter here. You know, you're looking around the Mayo community. You see we had some hail indications at points, you know, still due to some degree in Lafayette County. So we're watching that. We are watching some lightning in the, you know, Big Bend region. These aren't maybe as strong as they were earlier on in terms of the convection. I mean, it's not necessarily the same ones, but in terms of the convection that, you know, was around toward the Big Bend earlier on in the afternoon as we're looking here. But we have this warning here for the Glenn County area. Our hail indicator that's normally pretty reliable is actually saying over 1.5 inches in size for the hail here right near I-95. Now it's down to 1.14 inches on the latest scan, but that's impressive. I mean, it was going to 1.65 inches there, and this is, you know, right there on Dock Junction. Let me see if I can effort a Georgia traffic camera for us here. A Georgia 511 perspective would definitely be helpful here. We'll try to, you know, try to give you a look at what's going on up there in north southeast Georgia. Give an eye to the sky here, you know, for the viewers at home that, you know, are not in that area or not out in it, something to that effect here. You know, just try to keep you guys safe and informed for sure. So let me go ahead and kind of see what I might be able to find. I'm sometimes not able to really get too much, but we'll try. Okay, we have a little something here to kind of try to show you. Okay, let's take you to this camera here. This is actually a pretty decent look here at not decent conditions as we're looking there right now toward Crispin Boulevard. There, you can see it is pretty nasty out there right now. That's in the Dock Junction region up in Glenn County. You see that I noticed just it looked like there's a Winn-Dixie there in this view. That's a shopping center there, and they are getting some heavy rainfall in that area right now there in toward Glenn County. So you see some flashes. Hopefully it's just lightning and not power flashes or anything like that. You know, as we're looking at the situation there. But again, we'll go ahead and keep looking. And, you know, it's pretty nasty. I'll see if I can find any more camera shots as we're trying to deal with this here. That's one view. I may try to go a little bit further to the south here. Let's pull up this viewpoint. It's not much further south, but it's looking more toward I-95 on the Georgia 511 perspective here. Trying to give you guys a visual on what's going on this Memorial Day weekend. Some pretty nasty travel conditions right now in Glenn County and southeastern Georgia. I know it's, you know, kind of getting toward the summertime pattern, but not exactly that yet, and we haven't really got ingrained into having these day after day, so I'm trying to take these a little bit more seriously with these warnings in terms of doing more coverage for them. Eventually, once we get these every day at every spot, some of them we just won't break in for because it's just the nature, you know. Some of them in more rural areas are less impressive on radar, but this is actually more impressive on radar than what we saw yesterday, I would say. You know, the word Crescent City we broke in yesterday, Crescent Lake area. This is a pretty impressive storm. I know it's a little further from the radar site than, you know, you would be able to tell for sure what's happening at the surface, but this looked pretty nasty. What I was kind of seeing here within the different algorithm that looks at things. There's a lot of flashes. Again, that may just be lightning. You know, that's still very dangerous. You know, power flashes indicate stronger winds in the vicinity, not necessarily a tornado or anything, but this may just be a lot of dangerous lightning with some of it being cloud to ground. Oh, I think I saw one of those there on that view as we're kind of looking at things. I think it's the top left there if I you know, saw it there in the corner of my eye correctly for that split second. But let me go ahead and kind of look here as we are watching things on Memorial Day weekend. Continuing to give you guys the visuals on what we're tracking here. Try to give you another viewpoint. So actually there's quite a few of them there available to us in the Glenn County region. So let's go ahead and go to this one here toward Glendale Drive there in Glenn County. You can see it is looking pretty wet there. State Road 27 East at Glendale Drive, the Georgia 511 perspective. So yeah, definitely telling that story there. Not the greatest weather conditions. As we go ahead, you know, that's kind of looking more toward Glencoe just a bit. as we're looking. I'll go more into Ward Dock Junction itself. Let me go ahead and try to kind of give you guys a visual on what's going on here, Georgia 501 perspective, as we're kind of trying to give you guys everything you need here on what we're done with this afternoon. So it is 3:52 here. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center, tracking, that's a lot of traffic, by the way, to be out in this pretty nasty weather. So just hope we don't have any accidents here, because, we could have serious accidents in these type of rough conditions as we're looking at things. This is Glenn County, Georgia, Southeast Georgia, just north of Brunswick there is where the bulk of this is, the focal point of the accident is. So, again, let's go ahead and just continue to monitor the situation here. We're just going to keep looking at things and keep tracking them. Let me go ahead. I need to go to a more, hyper local type of radar review, which would be the Jacksonville sub versus the one that combines everything. So that way we can get a little bit quicker update, because this is more into Dock Junction now as we're looking at things. So looking at the wind enhancement, there's weak rotation. Let's look on the southern flank. There's not a warning down to Ward Brunswick, but I tell you what, right or just east of 95 there. Let's see if we can find something. That'd be a camera a little further down there. We'll see what I can potentially find. I might, honestly, it may be a little bit further to the north of where these are, but try to get my bearings here geographically. Let me see if I can find something that kind of looks in here at this. We'll try this view. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and say I-95 south at US 17/US 82 mile marker 29. It's the Georgia 501 cameras. I know it's just important to keep an eye on things. By the way, as I see all this stuff in Georgia, there's now an airport weather warning for Jacksonville International Airport at 5 o'clock. Wind gusty and tropical storm force possible here with some of this activity. So, got to stay weather aware of that. I don't know if they'll, maybe you have to change some of those, flights around a little bit due to the inclement conditions. It's definitely a possibility. As we go ahead and look here, let's go ahead and continue to give you the very latest. Let's see what there's tracking to the airport. Okay, there's this down here. Ooh, that might be about to get a warning there. A severe thunderstorm warning, not just an airport weather warning. But that's just east there and south of the airport. Seeing winds to at least 50 at a pretty low, very low level, to be quite honest. So that may need a warning here very soon. As we have the marginal risk run, so we could get a handful of warnings. That may not be our only warning today. Like some days we'll only have 1 or 2 warnings. We could get it's not a guarantee, but if the conditions come together this wrong, we could get more than just a couple warnings here on things this afternoon. Honestly, again, down here it was so quick. I mean, I saw it really pulse up right when I was at the coast myself. So, I mean, I'm backing this up. You could see how right there we were seeing some really nasty indications, right along the coast. I mean, so, they were really kind of, seeing that develop right on them there. But they got a lot of rain around Crescent Beach, I would think. Yeah, look at that. 2.5 inches of rain there on Crescent Beach. I just hope everybody's safe. We'll make sure, to look at, see if there's been any reports, anybody being injured by this weather, because hopefully they were able to get inside, but there was definitely lightning around. No warning was in place, especially warning later on, but you don't need a warning. I went over this yesterday. You don't need a warning to have deadly weather conditions. I mean, that's, lightning is not something that's in the warning criteria. You could have tons of lightning, but not even, have a severe thunderstorm warning in play. And some of that lightning could be cloud to ground getting into this time of year, and some of it could be deadly, depending on where you're at, association with it. So you got to be really mindful, really careful as we're looking at things. Trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on here in toward the Weather Center. New warning in Georgia, by the way, being issued now. Okay, new warning being issued now toward southeastern Georgia. with this complex here. Yeah, this accident and winding down. You know, it's getting stronger as it gets further down toward the east and south. We're talking about now into Brunswick proper. So, northeastern Camden, southeastern Glen until 4:30 with a severe thunderstorm warning. At 3:56 p.m., severe thunderstorms are located along a line extending from near Little St. Simon's Island to 6 miles southwest of Brunswick, moving southeast at 25 miles an hour. 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts, quarter size hail, Brunswick, St. Simon's Island, Dock Junction, St. Simon's Island Village, Country Club Estates, Sea Island, and Jekyll Island here under this. So for your protection, you want to get inside on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. So, you know, some of these areas up here, you can have some pretty nice views there of the water, but you really want to be in a spot here where you definitely don't want to be out, let's say, on a patio right now overlooking the water. That could be, you know, really dangerous here as we're looking at the situation here this afternoon. Continuing to give you guys the very latest here in the Weather Center to protect you, your friends, and your family here. It's so important to be mindful of what's going on in these type of weather situations. So, again, I'm just trying to let you guys know what we're dealing with here. Just trying to know, you know, what is happening here best I can based on looking at the Doppler perspectives. It's just so important here to be mindful of things. As you look right around Brunswick there, right in toward the Brunswick area. You know, don't want to get in further south. Let's see if we can get a camera in toward Brunswick a little better. You know, we'll see what we can find closer toward town. As we look here. Yeah, let me see what I have over there on the door to 511 perspectives. We're going to go ahead and pull up State Road 25 east at State Road 25. It looks like connector maybe. So as we go ahead and look here, you see the dark skies telling that weather story. And towards southeastern Georgia. You know, we just got to be aware of this. Got to be mindful of it as we're tracking this severe weather up in toward Georgia. These are, you know, nasty conditions. A lot of folks out and about here on Memorial Day weekend, the Sunday afternoon. They be catching you guys off guard, but you need to be, you know, really in a better spot here. You need to be inside. You need to be away from those windows. Definitely don't be outside. You can't be outside in this weather with all that lightning around. And as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, it's so important, you know, to take heed of these inclement conditions here as we're looking at things. Just trying to keep you guys informed on what is happening. As we're watching the situation, I know we're just going to keep on checking all these perspectives out. Now, as we're on the air, just want to remind everybody that our hurricane specialist has nothing to do with the tropics here, but, you know, tropical weather, nothing like that. But our hurricane special will be Thursday night at 10 p.m. So make sure you tune in on all the different platforms. Then, and 13 years ago, Memorial Day weekend, we were watching Tropical Storm Beryl, almost a hurricane come ashore, but, you know, not the case here. Right? Nothing like that. That's, you know, that's the good news. But, you know, still have to just always be cognizant. This is an area that's kind of overdue for a landfall. But, you know, as we're looking towards southeast Georgia, especially for, you know, a big impact in terms of a direct hit from a hurricane. But as we're continuing to track things here, we're just trying to keep you guys up to date on what's going on with these weather scenarios. So let me go ahead and move away from this right here. We'll go back to the Doppler perspective. Again, a pretty nasty storm there and complex of storms, really. This is looking like a nasty hail producer here. As we're getting down there, over an inch in diameter, according to other source. That'll be headed on the south side of Brunswick here over the next little bit. We also have another storm here into Duval County that's showing now hail. It could be getting up to about an inch on this latest scan here, just east of the airport, in fact. Not a warning there yet, but, you know, just gotta have to keep our eyes on the situation. Let me go ahead and keep looking here. Keep tracking everything. I'm gonna see if I can put a camera there toward Jackson International Airport as we're getting, you know, up toward Duval County. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of see what we can kind of give you guys visually on that with the nasty weather conditions. So important. Well, the one view doesn't really show too much at this moment in time, and I'm gonna pull it up. But things can always change here pretty rapidly. And speaking of changing here, we now have a severe thunderstorm warning for portions of Duval and Nassau counties now until 4:30. So let's go ahead and go back to the Doppler. It's set update on us in just a second, with a new yellow box popping up here toward the south. So it'll pop up in here in this vicinity, give or take. So as we're kind of tracking things here, you'll see that come on the screen here. You know, there's a new severe thunderstorm warning. There you go. And I'll zoom out to see the full scope of it. It's a little bit better. But we're talking about portions of Duval and Nassau now until about 4:30. And they're saying it's a little bit east of the airport, but near Ocean Way is where the worst of this is. 9 miles east to be precise. That's why we weren't really seeing a whole bunch on that camera, maybe with the worst of this. I think some of it definitely is closer than that. But in terms of the worst, you know, the kind of bullseye with it there as we're looking at things. But again, we're talking about east central Nassau, northeastern Duval counties until 4:30. At 4:03, a severe thunderstorm is located near Ocean Way, or 9 miles east of Jackson International Airport, moving northeast at 20 miles an hour. So, you know, we got to watch that 60-mile-an-hour wind gust, quarter size hail there. Fernandina Beach, Talbot Island, Ocean Way, Amelia City, Little Talbot Island, and Fort Caroline. So we're watching that area very carefully. We're just trying to keep you guys up to date here on what's going on with the severe thunderstorm in the First Coast region there, and headed toward, you know, the coastline there of the First Coast. So again, just continuing to track that here. The movement on that northeast, the movement to the north is actually southeast. This is still more impressive. Look at all that lightning. My goodness, and some of that is ahead of that even. That's dangerous, guys. That could be deadly, because if any of that's clouding the ground and there's somebody out there, you know, that could be a really serious situation, because this is a holiday weekend. You got to take this lightning very seriously, especially in that storm. There's a bunch of it that's out ahead of this, and I'm sure some of that's clouding the ground. So, you know, that means it can hit a tree or it can hit a person, something along those lines here, and that could be catastrophic. So, you know, in terms of if it hits a person there, and you talk about somebody getting severely injured, or even sadly becoming a lightning fatality there, and a lightning fatality statistic there in a terrible way. You just don't want to have that happen, obviously. You don't want to be a statistic there of, you know, lightning, and, you know, it's just terrible, terrible intensity sometimes, but in terms of the human toll. But as we go ahead and continue to track this, we have 2 warnings in our area right now. The one in southeast Georgia, we have this warning here toward northeast Florida here. There's some lightning with it too, and you even just got to watch out for any of these with lightning. I mean, you don't have warnings or need warnings on stuff like maybe out here, and you have a bunch of lightning right there between Lafayette and Suwannee counties. You know, you got to be really careful with that. You got lightning in Liberty County. It's pretty rural out there, but, you know, if anybody's out there, got to be really careful. As we're looking at our maps here, of course, I've been watching stuff. This some in southern Flagler and the northern parts of Volusia County there. You see a pretty nasty area, storms, and the movement on that. Let's see if we can kind of get an idea on the movement of that one. It's kind of headed more easterly, it looks like, but some of that lightning could be, still impacting some of our areas this year. As we look north of Pearson, see some lightning. I mean, the way the lakes are there, you're kind of getting, and the waterways are, as you're tracking things, you just have to be kind of mindful of the scenario. As we're right on the edge of a viewing area there, but again, just trying to give you guys the very latest on what's going on. It is 4:08 on this Sunday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center, trying to give you guys everything you need here to protect you, your friends, and your family. You just got to be really weather aware here of what is going on. You just want to be on top of the situation. You just want to be on top here of the scenario. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. It's so important to do that. Well, that storm in northern Volusia is close to being warned, I would say, based on that signature. Liberty County now has an advisory on it. Not a warning yet, but an advisory. And the latest Storm Prediction Center outlook just came out. I know you see severe thunderstorm watches toward like Oklahoma, toward Arkansas, Mississippi, Tennessee. And then this is the wind risk here. 5% in our area, a lot of it anyway, not all of our area. As of course we're always watching things here, around our region for those 62 counties. There's a look at that. As we continue to give you guys the very latest on what's going on here. So important, so imperative. Let me go ahead and switch something over. Again, we're watching this, but then also I want to go ahead. We're going to take off the watch information, at least some of it for a moment. Because I want to go ahead and put on the enhanced risk. You have two of them in the country today. Lubbock, Abilene, Oklahoma City. Now, tornado-wise, some of that's going to be focused more out toward the west of Oklahoma City and the south. Maybe, Lubbock to north of Abilene. But as you look south of Memphis there, we have another 5% tornado risk. That's a little bit, further south than east than you didn't really see this time of year, Memorial Day weekend. But we'll continue to watch. I know yesterday there was a tornado watch in Oklahoma, but not too much came of that. Things just, even though the parameters were up there in terms of the tornado threat, tornado parameters, they didn't really come into play here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So, quite a few flash flood warnings there in northern Arkansas. And then eastern Oklahoma, we have a flash flood warning there. It's always important to keep an eye on things. You see a small tornado risk in Colorado, right around the Denver metro area. That's something to kind of keep our eyes peeled out for. Kind of cool up there, but maybe you would kind of see something like a landspout tornado or something to that, effect there if things got going. So, just always interesting to kind of keep an eye on the overall weather picture here. It's so warm in the areas that aren't having the storms, aren't getting the storms. You see the severe thunderstorm warning around the Brunswick area. Let me go ahead and go back in over here. That is a really nasty storm right around Brunswick here right now, and a whole complex of them, really. As we're looking there, right around US 25 and Altamont Avenue there. Not what you want to see, obviously, this afternoon. Memorial Day weekend here, no less. Let me go ahead and go to a traffic camera view in the region again. Georgia 511. All this lightning around. I know it's something I'm seeing on these cameras when I'm pulling them up. You know, even right before I pull them up here. You know, on a screen for you guys, I'm pulling them up behind the scenes. You know, it's just one-man band, but as I see here things, you know, it looks nasty. This not a good situation here this afternoon. People happen to be out and about on a holiday weekend with these very inclement conditions in these localized areas. I mean, it's pretty localized, but it's actually over a little bit bigger of a swath here than you generally have with some of this pop-up acts, and you'd have sometimes later in the summer it's a little bit more confined. This is pretty impactful across that corridor there, the I-95 corridor in the Brunswick area. This is some pretty ramped up acts in here, risky storms for sure, as we're looking at things. So again, got some hail potential in here for sure as we're tracking it. Trying to keep you guys up to date on all the different platforms here. It's all about protecting you, your friends, your family. We're on Facebook, Casey Cloud X Cloud Weather, or on Twitter /X at Cloud Casey, YouTube at Cloud Weather. We have Twitch there, Cloud Weather, and all the different links available, cloudweather.com. So, again, trying to stay on top of this here. Trying to stay on top of the situation. I know it is some really, significant looking severe weather there or southeastern Georgia. In that corridor there. Let's get to this. Look there toward Altima Avenue, one of the angles on there. Pretty busy area, pretty nasty activity here. You can see the wet roads. The wind's not blowing a whole bunch on this view at least. By the way, we're getting a report now. It's a delayed report. It's really from an accident that was right along the coast that didn't quite get warned. Unfortunately, that's just the way it goes. Sometimes stuff will pop up and it's so close it's hard to say if it's at the coast or not. And in the case of some of the stuff towards St. John and Flagler region, there, St. John specifically, it was with the St. Johns County Fire Rescue reporting several power lines and trees down in Butler Beach, but no structure damage or power outages reported so far. That happened a little over an hour ago, but just being reported on here in the system. So, again, continuing to track things here. Let me go ahead and see if I can, manipulate the radar and kind of go back in time a little bit with it as we're kind of tracking things. I know it's always important to keep an eye on situations here. Real quick, I want to take the hail again. I want to go ahead and show you that it could be well over an inch, maybe closer to an inch and a half in diameter here southwest of Brunswick, right around I-95. It could be, something that's pretty nasty there. It could just be a lot of inch or so size hail too, and it's just overdoing that just a little bit here as we're looking at things, but still, just got to be really mindful of that here this afternoon. I know, we'll go ahead, give you one look along Interstate 95, maybe a little bit too far south, but, don't have a look, there's not a view everywhere. There's not a view everywhere with all these, but Horse Stamp Church Road, Camden County. Let me go ahead and zoom back out. The storm in Duval is not overwhelming right now, but we still need to watch it. That warning continues to 4:30 for portions of Duval and Nassau counties. So that warning until 4:30. Camden and Glenn's till 4:30. And then we had even a funnel cloud reported, before the accident was able to make it a little bit further away from the coast there toward that St. John's region. Unfortunately, again, it's pretty nasty there, but didn't quite end up getting a warning there on it. Just the way things went there with the meteorology, but I know, just continuing to track everything here. Not even sure. Let me check something real quick before I say this, because okay, there was an advisory out. It looks like it points on that area, but just trying to double check some things. This is just, sometimes the meteorology things can be really tricky. Let me go ahead and see here what we have. I have a loop here. You can see how I even had a funnel cloud later on with that. As we continue to check things here in the weather center. So that funnel cloud report on that storm there that has the marine warning. It's a little bit weaker now as it's getting further away, but it was from a trained weather spotter at 2:25 p.m. Apparently they relayed a video of a funnel cloud over Matanzas Inlet just west of the A1A bridge. So some pretty impressive stuff. As we go ahead and keep looking, you can even see a shear marker pop up on there as this was getting off the coast here. Yeah, I mean, you can kind of, it said 325, and I'm just trying to kind of load all the frames in there in between. Yeah, that's about right there. In terms of it being in conjunction with the velocity there. I'm scrubbing between. This is about 3 o'clock. 3:10, 3:15, just kind of riding the coast there. 3:20. So some of those greens and reds coming into play. They weren't overwhelming, but the storm, no structure damage or power outages reported at Butler Beach area, but several power lines and trees were down. So I gotta wonder how, that would mean if the power lines are downed in that area, but there's no power outages, that would make me think there's a lot of power lines that were still alive when they went down. And, in a hurricane, sometimes, they'll still be live after they go down. And that's, people get near them, that's how fatalities can happen. So you got to keep that in mind here. Got to be very careful with that as we're tracking things. You just got to be kind of mindful with that. It's interesting. Sometimes the storms, are enough to knock the power out, and then power lines are not working anymore, and the power's not working anymore per se. But other times the lines could definitely still be live. So, and that's, really, that could be really dangerous. That can be deadly. So, got to keep that in mind there in the aftermath of this pretty nasty storm there toward the St. Johns County area. And maybe a little bit of northern Flagler as well. So. Again, continuing to track all this here. Let me go ahead and zoom on out. I know there's now an advisory for some of this action, Putnam and Flagler until, let's see, 5 o'clock. So 45 to 55 mile an hour winds and Peace-side tail. And then you're looking toward northern Volusia. Some of this angle, some of this is trying to show going a little bit further north. We'll have to watch it from that direction here. Let's go ahead and look at this into Duval County. You see that storm pretty strong, just maybe severe just east of 95. This is still, they're probably going to have to extend this warning unless this gets off the coast or really weakens here. Coming up into Georgia now. The Florida storm, not so much, and they are saying they're going to expire it out here. Coming up at 4:30, it's going to go off the map. Still being played at 4:30, but this isn't really maybe meeting the severe criteria anymore. But this up here is a different story. This is some nasty weather in toward southeastern Georgia. This is, dangerous weather. This could be, very severe weather there toward areas in toward the Camden Glen zone. I don't see as much wind, but still hail potential in there, lightning, still really ramped up. So, got to be very mindful of that here for sure as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. I know. Let me see if there's any hail reports out of that, as I'm going to go ahead and check some of my different sources here. There are a couple hail reports. A dime-size hail report at 415, just west of 95, and an in Brunswick proper dime size, about 3/4 of an inch, which is just under severe criteria officially, but that didn't mean there wasn't some meeting severe criteria somewhere else in that vicinity. So there's just some imping reports there, some public, reporting details coming on in. So again, continuing to track this here. Continuing to give you the latest. 130 customers without power in St. Johns County in total. According to power.us, 2 in Flagler County. So even though Butler Beach didn't have any in the county in general, there are, 130 up in, St. John's, 1 in Duval, none in Nassau. Let's check Georgia, though. Get further to the north. When we're looking at the map, yeah, they are seeing, 800 or 608, I should say. McIntosh County, Georgia, Glenn County has 405 customers in the dark. Camden, none right now. But again, I just continuing to give you guys the very latest on what's going on here this afternoon. So we have 405 customers in the dark in the Glenn County area at least. And that number is probably still going up here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking the situation. So again, we're seeing some hail here. That's definitely a signature of hail right on the Glenn and Camden County line. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. I suspect this would get extended again just based on the history of what happened in the South and based on this looking pretty, vicious on radar still. We've been watching it for a while, but it's still hanging together. That's for sure. I'll try to put some of our forecast modeling up here for you here in a second. Go ahead and I'll go ahead and take everything off. I see there's now a flash flood warning, which is unusual. Not in our area though. I don't see them issue these too much this time of year in this pattern. But I see why they did it. Let me go ahead and pull it up real quick, and then we'll go to the model, and this just popped up. So this is down toward the Melbourne Weather Service region, Brevard and Volusia flash flood warning being issued there. Portions of those zones, just not as populated. What cities in here? Mainly rural areas, which again is also unusual. This is an unusual flash flood warning in pretty rural areas and regions that don't get them too much. So you'd think, well, how is there flash flooding? Well, the reason is because there's been a lot of rain. There 2 to 4 inches with another 2 possible. Some of these areas here southwest of Scottsmore could end up with a half foot of rain pretty quickly. Just torrential downpours occurring in that area. So flooding is either occurring or is imminent according to the Weather Service. It's important to know where you are relative to streams, rivers, or creeks, which can be killers in heavy rain. And then campers and hikers should avoid streams or creeks. Just turn around, don't drown when encountering flooded roads, as most flood deaths occur in vehicles. Memorial Day weekend, gotta be really careful. You don't see that type of warning very often. Let me go ahead. I'll take some of the current warnings off and the radar off and things along those lines so we can go ahead and give you the model information. What I'm going to do though, I am going to leave the warnings up, put this back up because if we get a new yellow box, you'll see that there in Georgia pretty much instantaneously. So I want to make sure we give you the latest in that regard. By the way, there's in the final lap of the Indianapolis 500, if you guys are keeping an eye on that here in the sports world. I know they had a little rain delay up there earlier on, but they're getting that in, and it's down to the wire in that. So that's something that is going on right now on the Fox Broadcast Network. But again, looking like Alex Pillow there gonna maybe win that, but looks like there might have been an accident. I don't know. So that's something that you'll have to watch there, and it looks like celebrations occurring in that. But as we go ahead and get back over the weather here, as the situation does continue to transpire. Let me go ahead and see here what we're doing with the different maps. So this is what the model is saying it's supposed to be going on at 4. It's not exactly setting up that way. As we're dealing with this here. But 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock there, 7 o'clock is trying to show some more development toward the First Coast region. We'll have to see if that happens. If so, we might, be in for a pretty thundery night. Maybe some warnings popping up, further down here along the St. Johns River area, give or take. But okay, new severe thunderstorm warning of 5:15 now for portions of Camden and Glen. You saw the new yellow box pop up, but I'm going to keep running through the rest of this model in here before we switch back over. But you see that new yellow box a little bit further to the south now. 60 mile an hour wind gusts, inside hail, but also a strong storm advisory toward Gilchrist, Columbia, Swanee till 5:15. But you see, just continuing to track everything here. Continuing to monitor things here. 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. This may not be exactly right, but you see some breaking up by like 10 p.m. As we get here into toward the later hours. It's going to clear on out. It's going to clear on out some. But then as we get into toward that Monday, that Memorial Day, you see in the morning looking pretty good. So that should be, some good news and maybe a little, warm side, even if it's early on because, the pattern we're in. But just make sure you're drinking plenty of water. But it's looking pretty dry, at least early on, in terms of no moisture in the morning right now. And the model runs. You see, by 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, stuff is taking its time getting going. But then we start to see stuff by 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 9 p.m. on that Monday, 10 p.m., 11 p.m. This is really late with this, midnight there on that, and Monday into Tuesday now. So we'll continue there to track all that. Let me go ahead and zoom back in up here as we give you guys the very latest here on what's going on in the weather world. Again, just trying to see what we're dealing with. This is still pretty nasty there in the southeastern Georgia. New severe thunderstorm warning till 5:15 now. Till 5:15 as we're continuing to track this scenario. Let me go ahead and read this to you. Still set hail risk hanging on. At 4:27, a severe thunderstorm was located near Brunswick, moving east at 15 miles an hour. Severe thunderstorm warning for northeastern Camden and south central Glenn counties there, and towards southeastern Georgia. Jekyll Island, High Point, and Dover Bluff under this. So, for your protection, move to an interior room on the lowest floor of a sturdy building. Wind damage could occur, especially to the roof side and trees. Hail damage could occur to vehicles. So you don't want to be out in this kind of weather. Don't want to be on the road. Don't really want to be even in a mobile home, in this kind of weather. It could be a little bit rough for you on this Sunday afternoon. So again, just having to, continue to watch this. Having to continue to watch this here. We're just trying to check all the different scans here on the Doppler. Again, watching the scenario here. So important to do that in the meteorology world. Again, we're still with you. 4:32 on this Sunday afternoon on Memorial Day weekend. It is May 25th, 2025. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center. We're just trying to keep you guys up to date on what's going on. We're trying to watch things. Flood advisory now for portions of Camden and Glen until 6:30 p.m. Just continuing to check all the different scans here. Just trying to see how things evolve. See west of Brunswick there, about 2 inches of rain so far in the last 60 minutes. Storm total here, maybe not doing it justice, but a lot of copious downpours. A lot of heavy rain. Let me go ahead. See what we have. I'm going to go down to a camera here, a camera view. Continuing to watch the situation. We're looking at I-95 north past Horse Dam Church Road. So important to keep an eye on the weather here. With the severe thunderstorm warning in effect. Let me see if there's any questions or comments from any of the viewers at home. Whether you're watching on Facebook, on Twitter/X, YouTube, or Twitch there. I'm meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the Weather Center giving you guys the very latest on what we're dealing with. This just keeps lingering around here. The wind profile on this doesn't look as impressive maybe, but they're still showing some very heavy downpours, and embedded with that some hail, and there could still be some wind being brought to the surface here with this. I will make the point that this is starting to get in a little bit more of a rural area now, because, you know, it's getting, some of the worst of this is getting east to 95, and some of the worst of this is getting, you know, away from Brunswick here now. So that's some good news as we're looking at the situation. There's still some population in here, but it's a lot different than, you know, you're right up there in toward Brunswick, you see, and Doc Junction there, but there's Brunswick. I mean, you know, they're still on the edge of this, but they're no longer under the warning. There's an advisory on some of this as we're looking, but the warning's for down in here, and we're not seeing much population in that. So again, we're going to keep watching that. If the trends continue, we may go ahead and wrap coverage pretty soon. But only thing I would say about that is it is kind of seemingly wanting to dip. It's wanting to dip more, you know, south and east, which could get it back into some more populated areas here. But that's a pretty rural zone. But our hail track has been impressive. You know, the reports haven't been crazy. I've seen some dime size, but it's happening to some degree. I just wonder if there's a lot of dime sized here. We had a couple dime size reports here come into our system, you know, as I'm looking at things. That makes me wonder if there's just been a lot of the dime size hail there as we're looking at things, you know, maybe versus something else as we're looking toward that zone, as we're tracking things there, because, you know, sometimes when you're in these situations, you can get a lot of hail, but it's just a little bit smaller than what they're estimating here, and that may be what's happening in that area there. Just a lot of that coming down, but the size of it wouldn't be as damaging, but it still make things slick. You know, it could be so much as that to make things kind of slick there, even, you know, in a spot or two on the roads. But again, just continuing to track all this here, you know, as we watch things, as we go ahead and give you everything you need to know. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to do something a little bit different. I want to go out to the long range here on some things. So let me go ahead and I know FSU baseball and the University of Florida, for that matter, both are probably hosting regionals there in college baseball coming up. Let me see what these projections are on that. I know FSU is still projected to. I'm talking about, coming up this weekend. I want to just look at the early forecast guidance on this. Let me make sure here, the projections from D1 baseball here real quick. See what they have, because it's a fluid situation. The announcements will be made for the host at least tonight at 8:30, I believe, before the full bracket comes out tomorrow. But just want to see what the weather conditions. By the way, speaking of weather for games, let's mention something real quick. Games where they have softball there and in action now. And the weather right now, at least, is holding off, so that's good. It's something where I need to put some of this other information on for a second. It's very, very warm out there, though, don't get me wrong. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things there in toward that area, but at least the weather is kind of holding off there in toward Alachua County and FSU. Valiant effort, but they couldn't quite there get things done in terms of getting toward the next round in the Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City. But as we're kind of checking things here and tracking things, though, I know the Gator softball team up 1-0 in the second inning there as we're looking at things. But as we're, tracking things here, I know FSU softball didn't quite get it done. But speaking of those projections there for next weekend, I want to just check the weather for what, is the thought process is there in terms of the sites. Right now, okay, Florida's no longer projected to host. That's interesting. They're projected to go to Atlanta to take on Georgia Tech instead. They could still host, quite honestly, but FSU is projected to host as a 12. They're in toward Tallahassee. So, well, what we'll do, we'll just go ahead and broaden the view out. I want to see the forecast model because it was looking pretty well yesterday for next Saturday in some areas. So just want to, kind of get an idea of how things could progress. They're always subject to change. Last year, things got pretty, lucky there for Tallahassee in terms of not having too many rainfall issues. Might have helped the team really not have to, mess with the pitching as much because the games, are able to stay in, in progress once they got going. But so Friday is going to be the 30th. Okay. So let me go ahead and check here. I'm just pulling up a forecast model for that. I know we still got a warning in Georgia, pretty rural areas right now, and if the trends continue with that, I'll wrap up, but I want to stick with it a little longer. I still have some of the other information up. You can see the outlook. I'll take that off. I'll leave the watch and warning up, there for now. That information up there for now. This is going to be your DFS for Friday. So let's take you to early afternoon on Friday. Okay, we got a new warning now. Once again, this is going to get us through the rest of Camden County now to 5:15. So, okay, real quick, we're going to zoom back in and we're going to go back to the modeling. How about that? So let's just go ahead and see this new warning real quick as we're looking at this. More lightning is toward I-95 further down to the south now. A severe thunderstorm located 7 miles up toward the southeast of Woodbine there, moving southeast at about 15 miles an hour. So we're talking about St. Mary's, Kingsland, Keens Bay, Base, High Point, Dungeness, Cumberland Island, Harriet's Bluff, and Colesburg now. So yet another new warning issued on this cluster on the coast. I think they're trying to be extra careful here with the service in Jacksonville because this stuff's been holding together for a while, and because of the history on the accident, in our area today around Crescent Beach there. They had some really nasty weather, just, right around severe limits, but it was kind of developing right when it was getting off the coast. They never had a warning there. Butler Beach, several power lines and trees down there. So, again, something that you just got to be aware of. Even if you don't have a warning, you still got to be really careful here this time of year, and stuff can pop up so quick. Any time of year, you got to be careful with storms, but this time of year, they have a tendency to be, ramping up, ramping down a little quicker, but this in Georgia has not ramped down. This is really prolonging itself, in terms of, hanging together here more than we generally would. Generally you're going to get stuff to pop up, pop down, pulse down. But okay, real quick while we're on here, I do have a tornado warning in Tennessee to let you guys know about now that just popped up. This is their indoor areas there north of Huntsville. There's some radar indicated rotation southwest of Tullahoma, moving east at 45 miles an hour. So we have this is out of the Huntsville office for Moore, Lincoln, Franklin counties there in Middle Tennessee till 4:30 Central Time. So, okay, that's the storyline there. So we're going to keep watching. You see the hail marker showing up here. Just east of 95, especially with that. But okay, I wanted to go to the forecast model for toward Friday. We're talking about college baseball and what could, happen in terms of the weather conditions here. So let's keep breaking this down. This is a broad look. It may not set up like this at all. I mean, the model's, getting this far out of kind of, it's going to be, a guess on most. But this is just an idea. At 2 o'clock Friday, there could be rain around Atlanta and around Tallahassee. Not so much around Gainesville. However, keep watching here. This still sets up more in Georgia. Not as much around Tallahassee. It looks hit or miss. They'll probably still be able to get some stuff in. This might be a little bit of stopping and starting, unfortunately, which can mess with the pitching there. But as we're going ahead and looking, you see some stuff around Tallahassee. It may be heavier than this, but could also be a little bit, less coverage than this. But you see, this is early Saturday morning on this look. It's a little bit different than what I saw last night. So Saturday is showing some stuff towards central Florida in the afternoon, evening, but not as much further north. Tallahassee looks pretty dry. You see some stuff coming in around Atlanta, maybe, but this looks pretty dry, actually. That's a change from what I saw yesterday. It was washing out Saturday next week. But the other days are looking a little bit better. So we'll just have to wait and see. This is getting toward the 1st, which would be that Sunday. And you don't see a whole bunch of it, but you see some there. I'll back it up a little. Yeah, I mean, Georgia, but not so much in Florida. And then on the 2nd, you see here, not too much. So that'd be a better trend here. So right now, it's looking like, it's not a guarantee, but it's probably a really, really high likelihood that FSU would be hosting a regional here. That'll be announced in a few hours in college baseball. I mean, it was looking like they were going to host a regional and super regional if they advance, but now it's looking like they'll need somebody to lose because they won't be a top 8, but they still be a top 16. I would say they're not really in the top 8 bubble per se. They're probably not going to get into that, and I would not really say they're on the bubble to be out of the top 16 either. So they should be somewhere between about 9 and 15 or so FSU in the baseball bracketing. And Florida, though, right on that bubble, will they be like number 16 or will they be out of that? But as we're looking there and be on the road, I mean, it's possible. I don't think very many people want to see this, but it's possible at least that if Florida's just outside the top 16, they end up sending the Gators to Tallahassee for a regional. And I don't know if either team really wants to see that, but let's go ahead and look here at the maps, continue to watch things here, and monitor the situation weather-wise, and we'll go ahead and continue to track things here. I know if you want to avoid rematches, you don't want to be sending, Gainesville's team, the Gators, to Tallahassee. But, we'll be watching the weather. Really, I would say both deserve to host regionals. Just Georgia Tech kind of does too, though. That's the thing. They won the ACC regular season, and of course, so Florida, they beat FSU at 2 out of 3, but Florida State has the better overall resume. Okay, back to weather we go. Severe thunderstorm warnings continue in southeast Georgia. As we're looking at this, you can see until about 5:15. This is for parts of Camden County. There's southern Camden County, St. Mary's, Kingsland, Keens Bay Base, High Point, Dungeness, Cumberland Island, Harriet's Bluff, and Colesburg. Further to the north, that's, Jekyll Island, High Point, and Dover Bluff. I just continuing to track this. There's a little bit of weak rotation on that, it looks like. Let me go ahead and go to our other mode here. I don't really see it. I think our radar is the angle on here is making it look like that. But I don't think there's really that much in the way of rotation. Not that it couldn't happen and tighten up, but we're going to watch that. We have a little bit of lightning in northern Coffee County there. Unfortunately, that Moody radar is still down, so that would help us in some of these. But then we have a storm here in southern Columbia, southern Suwannee, and northern parts of Gilchrist County. Wind gusts around 40 possible. It's a technically spring. You know, that's something to keep an eye on. You're not even, under a warning, but it's probably too dangerous to be outside there on this Memorial Day weekend right now around Itchitucky Spring with that lightning around Fort White and Hildreth. We're looking at Suwannee River vicinity anyway, as we're done with things this afternoon. So, again, just continuing to track things here. Continuing to monitor the scenario. Let me go ahead and keep checking our Doppler scans. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. Just checking everything here. Just gotta always be mindful in these type of scenarios. I'm just trying to keep you guys informed. Let me go ahead and take that tornado warning from in Tennessee right now. South of Tullahoma. Definitely some wind enhancement there. Ooh, that's what, really nasty severe winds look like. We haven't really been seeing that on our scans. Even on Crescent, beach there, it was pretty nasty. Didn't have that, actually be warned, but, it was looking pretty nasty. That there, though, I mean, that is really nasty in southern Tennessee right now. This is a tornado there or not. That is some winds there to about hurricane force and gust. That's north of Huntsville. Let me go ahead and keep looking at things. See a boundary here. Let me see how that boundary's interacting. We had a couple boundaries it looks like. So yeah, we have the one boundary headed this way. This boundary kind of headed this way. That may, enhance the development down here possibly. As we're looking at things. It doesn't always work like that, but that's something to watch next little bit. This here, sometimes that can cause stuff to spin up, and the radar's not going to be able to read into that as well in this angle, but to see how the boundaries are interacting up here, but that can cause stuff to kind of enhance for a minute, sometimes spin up. I don't see it spin up really, but we've got to watch that there as we continue to track things. Continue to monitor. Continue to give you the latest. Again, you see that lightning there. Just whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors. See in Nassau County, there's some wind enhancement. Again, still sticking with you right now. With that getting a little bit further down toward, further down almost to the Florida-Georgia line there. But talking about Camden, Glenn counties with the warnings in play here. So just important to kind of keep an eye on things. I know Camden and Glenn, there's a flood advisory. We were alluding to that earlier on. Last hour, some of these areas up here. Well, this purple's over 2 inches in an hour recorded. That's pretty impressive. Yeah, just trying to give you guys the very latest here on what's going on. It's all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. Just checking some of my different sources here. See if we can get some more camera views up. Gonna keep on looking at things. Keep on tracking. Let me go ahead and keep looking here. See if we can get something closer to where Kingsland on some of these views. Bear with me. Well, let's pull this one up here. Just 6 miles into Georgia there on I-95, mile marker 6. You can kind of see what we're down with on that. You know, at least I would say reduced visibility to some degree. Keep looking here. Well, let's try this one. I know a moment ago on the screenshot it was showing them darker skies. Now it's showing, well, some, nasty conditions around. Definitely rough weather there toward Camden County and Kingsland there. Southeastern Georgia. Not what you want to see. See the camera shaking around a little bit here. Telling that other story. We'll move away from that. I'm gonna put in some more views. We'll go just a little bit further east. Definitely kind of gloomy looking and stormy in the view here. Memorial Day weekend 2025. But it's going to be a lot, like that, many years this time of year. At least it's not gloomy because we have a tropical storm coming like we did in 2012 with Tropical Storm Beryl. That was a storyline, 13 years ago this weekend. Unfortunately, a lot of Memorial Day events, remembrances got canceled or postponed because of that. Made landfall. It was almost a hurricane on the first coast there 13 years ago, Memorial Day weekend. Can't believe it's been that long ago, but that was a, very memorable storm outside of hurricane season, which you don't generally get. I mean, don't really have, in recent decades here, too many storms hitting even the east coast of Florida's hurricanes here. The last, hurricane to hit the east coast of Florida, at peak season, I mean, I would think it'd have to be Gene there in 04. Of course, we did have Nicole just, a few years ago now. That wasn't at peak season, though. That was in November. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So, everything's been kind of more toward the west coast there of Florida. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. in toward the weather center. And all these major hurricanes have been warning toward the Gulf, hitting the state of Florida, like Michael and Helene and Idalia and Ian and Irma. So Beryl was just under Cat 1 hurricane strength 13 years ago this weekend, heading to First Coast region. I mean, believe it or not, you still have to go back to Hurricane Dora in '64 for a direct First Coast, East Coast landfall of a hurricane. Haven't had a direct First Coast, East Coast hurricane landfall in the northeast portion of the state since Dora in '64. We've had stuff come across, but not since '64 have we had something. 1964 have we had something, come straight on in like that. And we're really overdue, unfortunately, in that regard. And we got to really, pay attention toward hurricane season and just make sure you're preparing. Southeast Georgia is even more overdue, really. Where we're looking on the radar right now, these afternoon storms that are a little bit stronger than normal, but nothing to do with the tropics here as you're tracking things. But just always have to stay weather aware, have to be stocked up on those supplies and the like, because we are really overdue. It's hard to believe it's been since 1964. And Hurricane Dora coming on in there. Now that we've had a hurricane hit direct there, like that. It's kind of remarkable, really. And we just got to always be prepared here in these type of weather situations. A situation where everything just came together in the meteorology there for that to happen in 1964. The late George Winterland forecasting that there, as it was something that became such a big hazard here toward our area. But weather storms will be very impactful, obviously, just not necessarily directly coming in like that storm did back in 1964. Let me go ahead and see what we have here now with the severe weather for northern Alabama. There's now, a little bit of that state under a tornado warning. Got some of these spin-ups along this line, it would appear. Have to watch toward Chattanooga, maybe even for northern Georgia here. As we look ahead, if things want to start coming together with the greens and reds a little bit more, it doesn't look that, tight, but on the line, some of those intense winds could kind of start to spin up a little bit more. So it's something to watch up that way. I know in Arkansas right now, we got some severe weather. That looks like a pretty nasty hail producer. Maybe not 3 inches like the radar shows here, but golf ball size. Definitely a possibility. And then as we look toward Oklahoma, even there's a storm, south of Oklahoma City, and more severe thunderstorm. That doesn't look all that impressive, though, compared to even what we're seeing toward the Southeast Georgia region right now. As we'll continue to track things here, warning action continues toward these zones here. Even northern Nassau County now are starting to see a little bit more wind energy come on in. Right there north of the community of Becker. So this can be, not too far away even from Fernandina Beach as we look ahead. Just whenever thunder roars, you got to go indoors in these type of situations here, of course. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here, you just have to be very mindful of what's going on in toward the weather world. As we're looking at things, we just have to be giving you guys the latest updates on what we're dealing with. So, I've been with us for a while now. We've had a slew of severe thunderstorm warnings up there in southeastern Georgia, and that same, I-95 corridor region, granted, it's been dropping, kind of dipping south, but we've had, I'll try to count them up real quick here. It may take me a second because, had a bunch of other warnings in the country issued in between, but 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, looks like maybe 5 severe thunderstorm warnings this afternoon. See by the Jacksonville office. 4 of those would be on that axis up there because we did have one toward Duval and Nassau. But again, just continue to track all this here. Very busy, obviously. Continuing to track this severe weather warning. that marginal risk of severe weather in play. So important to keep an eye on things. That's for sure. Again, all about protecting you, your friends, and your family. See that wind enhancement there right at the border between Florida and Georgia. That's impressive too. Just outside of severe thunderstorm warning. The sun winds to about 50. Just under 50, but that's pretty low height. They could be reaching down toward the surface cause in a few years, just getting closer toward the St. Mary's community and toward southeastern Georgia. Again, definitely, got to keep monitoring things. Let me take the hail tracker again. Still showing hail. I mean, it's been maintaining this for a while, on and off, with hail. It's been a while since I've seen this hail this, large for this long. I mean, still showing over an inch size hail here, right around 995, just north of Kingsland there. I mean, the last hour, you'll be able to see, that orange track, a lot of it dipping more south than even, what the warnings would indicate. With that potential here, I mean, orange indicating hail over an inch in diameter, right along 995 corridor. Don't think it's been quite that big in a lot of spots, but the point of it is, you just have to be really mindful here that we could have a bunch of smaller hail even that could cause problems as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things here. So, just have to be really cognizant of that. Let's take you to a camera right in Kingsland here. Not right on 995, but right into our town, the door to 511 perspective. You actually see some of the pond in the water on the roadways there. That's getting a little bit on the deeper side. I mean, we've had a good bit of rain, but more of it even to the north. And you see how some of these areas here starting to flood a little bit. So you gotta be really careful there in North Camden County in southeastern Georgia. It's starting to become a case here. As you see, it looks like a fire truck coming on through. But, that type of vehicle is fine going through this. But, eventually if we keep getting more rain there, one of these lower lying type of vehicles here might start to have some trouble with this. So, as we continue to check things here with that precipitation in the that area. So, this is in the that area there in Camden County, Kingsland there. I'm definitely getting impacted here with these inclement conditions on this Memorial Day Sunday. I know you certainly don't want to, get your car stuck in this type of water, as I know the camera shots will go in and out. But again, just continuing to give you guys the very latest there on what we're dealing with in toward that area. Let's go toward I-95 there. South at Harriet's Bluff Road, mile marker 7 on the door to 5-1 perspective. We'll go ahead and jump on over there right now as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. You just gotta be paying attention here as the scenario evolves. Look at that traffic kind of backing up. Maybe could have got an accident in some of this type of weather. As we're looking at things, it's very possible, if nothing else, reduced visibility is causing backups, but with the one side, really backing up, the other side not so much, you got to wonder if there's an accident there on I-95, if things got so, so nasty and the visibility got so reduced. I mean, we may have had some type of accident there, and that would never be a good thing, obviously. Not good to have something like that occurring as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here in toward the weather center. So again, we're still here on the air with you, but this weather condition, action here being so adverse is not relenting as we're down with this. So we just got to stay on top of it. Just got to stay on top of it here. Can't let our guard down. Let's go ahead and keep looking here. You know, again, the backup. I know there's another camera a little bit further down. It was not working, so I don't know if it was, you know, it's just the weather's so bad or possible. I mean, let's say there was an accident down there, maybe go ahead and turn the camera off. You know, even I don't know that, you know, if it's so close in there, you know, might you know, obviously not want to show anything if it's, you know, if it's such, you know, we don't know if there's an accident for sure, but you know, if there was something that occurred, it could be pretty nasty looking. As we go ahead and continue to look here at things, I'm just seeing what I'm seeing a backup on the roadway here on the Georgia 5-1 traffic map. So I gotta just wonder if something like that, you know, could have occurred. But I don't know. Just kind of guessing here right now, but speculating, quite honestly. But again, as we're looking at the situation, these are some very adverse conditions, and you know, accidents definitely can happen in these type of weather events. Let's look at this here. Almost, it's not seeing anything on the velocity right, but I'm seeing a little bit of a hook there. East of I-95 in northern Nassau County now. Not really seeing rotation there. I am seeing a little enhancement of wind up here, but that's not on the right spot. Although we've got yet another tornado warning nationally. This one in Texas. We have this out here east and north of Lubbock, Dickens and Motley counties. A national level storm threat there with a tornado warning south of Roaring Springs. Ironic because, of course, you know, unfortunately, you know, tornadoes, you can, you know, just in the comparison way, it's unfortunate. Of course, it does sometimes help give you a warning, but you can hear the roar of a tornado as you're looking here with these situations. But let's go back to this axle. These tornado warnings, southern Tennessee, northern Alabama, mainly southern Tennessee, have some areas along this line trying to spin up west of Chattanooga. These could be impacting travel, and some of this will be headed toward the I-24 corridor there. Maybe as people are traveling from around Chattanooga up toward Murfreesboro, which, you know, obviously eventually get up toward Natchville. Could have some tornadoes crossing that. At least weaker tornadoes or strong winds. If nothing else, that could, you know, really impact travel. I'd advise against travel here, whether we have tornado warnings coming up further east or not. This type of wind here from, you know, some of these areas in southern Tennessee could be very problematic. These could knock down trees on the interstate here from, let's say, you know, just near Manchester, Tennessee here with this all the way down to Chattanooga, give or take. That's, you know, a broad brush, and tune to local meteorologists for more on that because we're focused on our local warning situation. We're not on, we wouldn't be on for these tornado warnings here if we weren't already on for our severe thunderstorm warning action locally, because these aren't overwhelming, but for the local level and for travel impacts, it's, you know, these light, you know, blues, greens indicate winds upward of 70 miles an hour in a decently widespread area, which could really knock down some trees on the interstate there. You know, as we're looking towards some of these communities, I-24 next little bit there could really be problematic as we're tracking it. This could, you know, even head right toward Chattanooga there. You know, as we're looking at things there in toward southern parts of Tennessee. I mean, it's got to be really weather aware here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here. Just can't let your guard down, that is for sure. Let's get back to our local warning. That storm just doesn't want to give up there, Camden County. Let me take a power at numbers now, see how much they've gone up, because I'm sure they have increased some. With this hanging around that area here, you know, just wanting to really maintain itself. First off, just north of our area, McIntosh County, where Darien, Georgia is, where they had that EF4 tornado back in 2008 on Mother's Day weekend. You know, they, you know, generally haven't had that many tornado situations over the years. I'm not saying we had anything like that today. We did not. I mean, nothing, you know, like that. Much, you know, don't think we had anything tornadic, much less an EF4. But 606 customers in the dark there in McIntosh County right now, as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. Then down in the Ward area, Glenn County now, as I broaden the view. So real quick, This is McIntosh, just outside of our area in the Savannah TV market in the Weather Service Charleston area. That's the county where I had the EF4 tornado in '08. You know, Mother's Day weekend, Mother's Day Sunday morning, ironically. Not a good time. I don't think we had any fatalities with that one, but, you know, as we're looking at things, but still a very, very damaging situation up there in an area that didn't get stuff like that really ever to that level. You know, so I just gotta, you know, always watch out for different, you know, weather situations, different parameter spaces to come together here. As we're looking at things, you just gotta be really mindful here of what can happen. You just gotta be really mindful here of these situations. And that storm back in 2008 had 170 and 180 mile an hour winds, but nothing like that today, obviously. We're talking about 60 mile an hour winds, give or take, in these severe thunderstorms in general, you know, with some of the higher levels there and the like. So, again, continuing to give you guys the very latest here on everything. Continuing to keep you guys up to date. Let me go ahead and keep looking. So Glenn County, the 1,307 customers in the dark with today's severe weather activity. And then for the power.us, only 10 so far in Camden, but I'm sure they're going to go up as we're watching this in real time. Speaking of real time, we just had a new severe thunderstorm warning pop up now, getting further down toward the south. It's right in this I-95 corridor all afternoon long, it seems like now, for portions of Nassau and Camden until 5:45. So we're talking about 60 mile an hour winds and inside hail getting further down toward the south now as we're tracking the situation. So we don't want to go anywhere when we keep having these warnings, you know, in this corridor on a holiday weekend when a lot of folks are traveling. You know, these things keep just popping up here. You don't want you guys to let your guard down in this adverse weather scenario. Just gotta stay tuned and stay safe. Keep watching out for the very latest. So let me go ahead and keep looking here through stuff. Just checking some of the informational sources. Don't see any questions or comments right now, but just thanks so much for tuning in and trusting me. This new warning till 5:45. At 5:13, a severe thunderstorm was located near St. Mary's, Georgia, moving generally east at 20, but there's definitely a southern component with this development. St. Mary's, Fernandina Beach, Yulee, and Amelia City. You know, these velocities here, we're still watching some wind enhancement here as we're looking at things toward the I-95 corridor. So just gotta stay tuned and stay safe with all that. You know, it's always important to kind of monitor these scenarios here as things do develop. It's, you know, just don't want to be caught off guard. I see around Kingsland there, Camden County peace-sized hail was reported in toward that area. That's not severe hail, but still noteworthy. But, you know, could have definitely had some bigger hail in some of these different spots here as we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. Just trying to keep you guys informed on the different developments here. So important not to let your guard down here, obviously, as things do evolve. We're just trying to make sure we're staying on top of everything for you here within the dangerous weather parameter space. Trying to make sure we're here for you. Okay, new advisory further down toward the south now. This is toward Putnam, St. John's, so it's going to be this one here. We had another advisory yesterday. They were at 459 for this area back out here, but this area here now is an advisory. So we'll see if it starts to intensify, and get a warning here ultimately. But then this here north of Dinner Island, moving in southern St. Johns County, we're watching that. It looks like some heavy rain, maybe end up getting some lightning, but this boundary hit some of this stuff in Union. We're starting to get some heavier rain out of that, getting stuff to develop there, vertically. And then as we go ahead and get here toward Nassau County, we're just going to continue to watch things. I know as we get toward, the days ahead there in our forecast, so if you're watching those rain chances, really be on the increase here. But, as we said in some of the model guidance, some of the latest model guidance, it was looking a little bit better toward next weekend, which would be good for those college baseball regionals. At least one of them will be taking place, I'm sure, across their area. Should at least have one in Tallahassee, and probably really, I'm an FSU fan here, but I think the Gators probably deserve a regional as well. As we're looking at things, they started out really poorly early in the year, but they finished really strong. So as we continue to look here, the weather looking better for that, but you still always have to watch out for pop-up stuff. There, it's always still a threat this time of year. As we're watching the Doppler radar technology. I know, speaking of watching the Doppler, I know they're watching the Doppler down in Gainesville right now for a super regional softball action. The Gators taking on the University of Georgia for our trip to Oklahoma City in the Women's College World Series there. As we go ahead and kind of look toward that area, we're just continuing to see how things are transpiring there. Fourth in Florida, up 1-0 against Georgia in that. So, see if any thunderstorm activity ends up delaying that, though. It's a possibility because that area has developed very rapidly. In fact, look at this, and there's no lightning yet, but the next couple scans we could get it. But this is 503. There wasn't anything there toward that area, and then we go 506, 508. 511, 513, and look at that. Next scan might even have more, and we're getting near 75, then you get a lightning strike, and then you could get a delay. So, it's definitely possible. I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but, University of Florida, so zoom in here. I know you can see a lot of that complex. Some of this is updated here, in recent years. I'm not sure if this satellite imagery has, but as we're looking at things, but I know some of the different complexes, I know baseball has been moved for them, but this isn't that far away. As we're looking at things, as we're tracking things here, and we'll just have to see if that causes some type of delay, which could impact. I know in softball maybe not as much, but as it would in baseball, but can impact pitching and decisions being made even to decide who goes to Oklahoma City in the Women's College World Series. Just continuing to track all this here. We have all these advisories down here, this warning up here. Some really nasty acts in East 95 in the rural area in southeast Georgia. There's a lot of lightning right around St. Mary's, right around Becker there in the Florida, region there. And just out from Georgia, the Sunshine State. So, I know as we keep looking, I want to look out toward, let's see here. By the way, penny size hail reported in Kingsland at 459. And then, okay, so we're watching a bunch of storm action. We go out toward the west side, some of the severe weather out toward like Arkansas. We have quite a few different warnings. One west of Little Rock, and just watching some of this pop-up convection. I don't have the, localized radar on points for some of these areas, but severe weather warning action down toward Paul's Valley there in Ada, Oklahoma. Some wind gusts possible, about 60 quarter-size hail there. We have multiple tornado warnings in, the country. This one in Texas, near the community of Glen, south of Roaring Springs. We have some radar-indicated rotation. Storms nearly stationary, but weather spotter did report a funnel cloud. Okay, and then as we look here, you see Tullahoma, Winchester. We have some tornado warnings in play here in southern Tennessee. Radar indicated rotation along a very nasty line of storms as it moves along, even kind of bowing out a little bit, indicating maybe stronger wind potential. We've seen some of that stronger wind potential in velocity, so you just got to be mindful of that here as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring the scenario here. We're just going to go ahead and look at things. It's just so important to do that, obviously. You just always try to be on top of things here in toward the weather center. Later on when you get toward the summer, as we get back to local view here, maybe we don't have to stick with these as long because people are more accustomed to this accent. Granted, this is still pretty nasty here. But when you have some of these that pop up just for a few minutes, we'll just post about them, on Facebook and on Twitter/X here, as we're looking at things. But been pretty nasty today. You see some of these gusty winds at times and spots. And then we have some warm temperatures here that are a storyline as well. We're at 93 east of Stark. I know this warm accent here is not as humid. Granted, it's cutting up there a little bit more, but still not much. 46%, but, it was a little bit lower yesterday, but it's not as moist of a heat, but it's still steamy filling out there for sure. With this, that heat energy can go into some of these storms, though. But I know down to 70 or so around Brunswick. That's really nice as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things up there toward Glenn County. Fort Myers downstate got a 97 degrees today for their high. That's intriguing to see. By the way, got some new information in now. Let me go ahead and zoom in here. We're getting some information now into the Weather Center that apparently there's been lightning there. That started a brush fire maybe around Kingsland. Let's see here. At 5:04 p.m. lightning started a tree and caught some brush on fire on Old Folkestone Road in Kingsland. So let's see here. Let me see. I don't think we have the LSR in here. I'd be able to kind of go to a traffic camera better if we did. Let me see if some other source I can see if I can correlate a traffic camera to the report. Well, they're saying 3 miles west-northwest of Kingsland, so probably somewhere up in here. Maybe. So let's see if we can pull up a camera to see if we can see any smoke then. Maybe, I don't know. It may not really give you the view, but it could just be the dark cloud. But we'll pull this up because I don't think we're quite close enough. It's probably something that can be contained here pretty quick. But you see how it's been kind of nasty with, the camera lens being wet and the like. Do still need to rain. That, brush fire story underlines that a little bit. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. Let's pull this camera up. Just kind of shows you what it'll look like after a heavy thunderstorm moving through. We showed you this camera earlier on, but you see all that ponding of the water there toward the grass. I mean, that, it's an area there. I think it might be made that way so it can kind of retain a little bit more of that when the road doesn't, but still quite a bit of water on the view. As we go ahead and continue to look at things, continue to track things here. Let's go to St. Mary's proper there in Camden County. Here's a view as we're looking at things. Reduced visibility still. To keep on looking there. Okay, that is our indicator now. The lightning starting a tree. There's where that was. But as we look, we have some of that lightning here. And then some heavy downpour, and that's trying to get a little further south. It'd be nice if it kept getting further east because we need to get this off the coast here. Turning in a beach cell. I mean, you don't want to be around the beach with people out there, but still, you just want to kind of get rid of this storm accent. They may just be going with an advisory for this coming up, but if not, there's an advisory further south. I don't know. In between it, they're just going to have to issue another warning now. because it's almost time again to make the decision. But speaking of warning, there's a bunch of, we now got 6 tornado warnings in the country. So none of these are confirmed as of this moment from what I see. But look at all these tornado warnings here. You know, we're looking from the high top radar there. So again, just kind of trying to watch things. You have a mountainous area. We were watching this the other day. They thought it was quite a bit higher, but sometimes things will kind of spin up in that area. See some rotation there. By the way, there's an airport weather warning over Jacksonville now until about 6 o'clock for some lightning dangers and wind gust dangers. But Jacksonville International, this tornado situation there, like what we have in several of these boxes there. As we're looking up that way toward the north. It's all within a severe thunderstorm watch. Maybe you thought of putting a tornado watch out there, but actually, I'll say you, it's actually north and east of where the tornado throw is supposed to maximize. It's just maximizing the yellow area, and instead it's maximizing the edge of the green into what's not formally a tornado risk. So really not there was there thought to the tornado watch as much as it would have been further back. But interesting how things will transpire on us here sometimes meteorologically as we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. So it's always got to stay weather aware. Radar indicated tornadoes in several areas there west of Chattanooga. So again, just continuing to track that there. There's different spins. You have a severe thunderstorm warning for Huntsville. So busy picture there on this Memorial Day weekend. All that travel going on, and that's we're headed toward the I-24 corridor. We have some of that tornado warning activity. You know, and not what you want to see, obviously. Different weather services even involved in some of these cases. Huntsville and some of this, but Morristown, Tennessee, and others. We also have some tornado warnings in Texas. That's a nasty storm there in, West Texas, per se, Marion to Dickens. And then speaking of tornado threats, we do have a tornado watch and play out that way. In that yellow shaded zone, now that is going until 11 o'clock Central Time. So Southwest Oklahoma and western North Texas and the South Plains. So again, that's something that are watching out that way for sure. Of course, we still have flash flood warning downstate here. Does not rain over it now, but some of these areas west of, and north of Turnbull and south and west of Scotchmore picked up, 4 or 5 inches of rain based on the radar estimates this afternoon, which is really impressive. Toward the metro there, they're getting some lightning, Orlando to Kissimmee, but it's not considered severe weather right now. Just whenever thunder roars, you want to go indoors. And then this morning here, actually it's till 45. I thought it was going off at 30, but no, 45 with this actually. I know we've been on for so long now, I'm kind of losing track of time a little bit. No, this morning goes to 45. So we still got a little bit more with it then. So it didn't go off at the bottom of the hour with that one, with that severe thunderstorm warning. So we're still having to continue to watch that as we're tracking things here in toward the weather center. So let me go ahead and brighten the view here again. See some of those temperatures. Some spots a lot warmer than others. 93 here east of Stark, 95 around Gainesville. I know you don't see the 93, but that's on my weather station here, Davis Weather Station. 93 degrees, 93.2 to be precise. I know a lot of you not out of the beach right now, obviously, because of the lightning, but if you still are, watch out for rip currents. Got to keep that in mind. Don't want to get sunburnt when the sun's out either. As we're looking towards some of these different spots, just got to always watch out for these different hazards. Holiday weekend driving sometimes, it can be pretty tough with all the traffic, and then got to watch out too here. Occasionally, sadly, any time of year, but especially, holiday weekend at night, you got to watch out for impaired drivers there that may, unfortunately, may have drank a little bit too much. They shouldn't be on the road, obviously, in that type of state. So, again, as we're going ahead and looking at things here and tracking things here, you just got to continue to watch the weather picture on this, this 25th here of May, 2025. The meteorologist Casey Cloud here in the weather center. See how cool it is up toward parts of Missouri this afternoon. 58 there. Stands out around Farmington, Missouri. 59 there around St. Louis, spirit of St. Louis Airport. So that's a lot cooler up that way. as you're seeing some of that wind direction come from the north and the east. But again, as we're tracking things here, I know we've had cooler weather up further in toward the northeast. You see even some 40s there in Maine popping up on the map here. I'll back it up 4 hours and you kind of see a similar story. But as we go ahead and continue to watch things here in toward the weather center, we're just trying to make sure we're staying on top of things. We're trying to stay on top of things here with the adverse conditions. You know, we just got to make sure we're on top of it for you. We got to make sure we're on top of it for you. And we still have that warning. We still have tons of lightning. Let's look at some lightning down here. If there is any, there's not yet. But this is important because there's a University of Florida softball game going on to decide who goes to Oklahoma City. If we get even one lightning strike down there, they'll probably need to delay things. Unfortunately, as we're looking, I'm going to just pulling up all my different sensors here. I don't see any yet, but even one strike comes into play. If it's within like 8 miles, they'll have to delay that for at least, I would say, depending on the criteria they're using, 30 minutes. So nothing yet. So that's good, obviously. You don't want to see that, but it takes a little bit longer, you know, and like if, it depends if you're like where you're at, because if it's a more, you know, smaller event, then you can get that cleared. So maybe you don't need 8 miles, but a softball thing at a stadium, you might need it. In fact, it looks like they have gone ahead and delayed it maybe. So let me see here. You know, I don't see any lightning here, but maybe we had one strike pop up in just, you know, last several minutes. I'm going to look here. Because I am seeing a report saying it's delayed. So let me see if they've sent out a release here. Roy, you know, just a tweet about it. Okay, they sent out a tweet 2 minutes ago here. Yeah, so they're saying weather. And Roy, I got to keep in mind, too, I kind of forget this because in football, we're talking about lightning. You can have as heavy rain as possible. They're just going to go ahead and delay it because of the, you know, rain probably in toward that area. I mean, you know, just the rainfall getting on the field with that strengthening downpour. I'm going to check the UF weather stem station real quick. Let's see if they're seeing any lightning on that. It doesn't necessarily matter when, you know, when the field just has to be covered. That's what has happened apparently based on, let me see if that's an actual picture from, yeah, it says 5:30, so looks like they've covered the field there. I don't have the broadcast on, but looks like they covered the field. As we continue to watch things here in the Florida Weather Center, okay, I see it's just showing now. There has been, you see it on our map too, but I went to a different source for lightning. And you see there's now a lightning strike there popping out of that, only 4 miles away, cloud to cloud, but still, that's according to Weather Standard. I'm 1 minute ago, 4 miles away, still lightning strikes. They're going to be in that for a while there, in that contest between Florida and Georgia. So 1-0 in that one in the 4th inning. So winner goes to Oklahoma City in the Women's College World Series. As we go ahead and keep looking at things and keep tracking them, we're getting some more reporting in now. Even though we didn't have any local tornado warnings this afternoon, you know, we already talked about there was one funnel cloud seen there down toward the south earlier on. I'll back this up. You'll see what I'm talking about eventually. I have to click on it for a while, but, well, it was in that area. I may have to, can we load further back? I can go to different sources. It's only letting me go back 1 hour on here, so let's just do it. We'll do it a different way. We'll get it up here. Okay, so what happened, if I go to the other source, this is from earlier, this is radar from earlier, but we did have a train spotter report funnel there over Matanzas Inlet just west of the A1A bridge at 325. But then, you know, we've been on here for almost 2 hours now. We just got a report in with some of this action. You know, when we're tracking stuff further to the north. It just came in, but at around 3:47, there was a funnel cloud spotted. So what we need to do here, let me just go ahead and pull up our coded map for a second. You know, we're always on top of things for the 62 counties. We're always on for any tornado warning storms. Haven't had any tornado warnings, but we went on for these thunderstorm warnings in play because they've been pretty rough looking ones we've been seeing here across the region. But yeah, the funnel cloud report to the north in that same hour. This is after we got on the air, though, it looks like. This is down here south of Brunswick. We had a report of a funnel cloud spotted. It was over I-95. It would seem near Jekyll Island and exit 29. So that's kind of a storyline there. As we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things. We've now had multiple funnel clouds spotted in our area this afternoon. That means, you know, that's pretty much what that is you have the rotation as if it's going to develop a tornado, but it's staying above the ground, so it's not actually a tornado. But, you know, the clouds, there's that rotation that's getting ready to try to touch down, so it's pretty impressive. You know, both of those coastal areas have that, you know, boundary action can kind of cause things to spin up some. Sometimes they can actually get down to the surface and really do a number, but, you know, quite a bit of damage. But hopefully that hadn't really happened today with this, but got some pretty strong storms now. This is toward northern Putnam County. Ooh, seeing some rotation on there. West of Palatka. So let me go ahead and look at that. I have a little hook on it. You know, let's look at this storm here northwest of Palatka. I don't think we have any Florida 5-1 cameras down in there. I wish we did because I feel like this could be something that could be producing a funnel cloud right about now northwest of Palatka, and there's another little area northwest or west of Bostwick, but that's not in the favorite spot. This would be right around State Road 100 there, coming into Palatka. You may have a, you know, like a funnel cloud situation, not necessarily actually producing, but, you know, tornado or anything. There's no formal warning on this, but it's just a similar idea with that hook on here as we're dealing with this afternoon. You know, you could see how it's really built up in the last little bit. The hail core could be just north here, you know, right around in this west of US 17. It's just, you know, just right down on the Palatka Airport. I tell you what, that's right there at the airport. So there's, you know, let me go ahead and put the information on. So I know you see some different places in there, but that's the airport's, you know, measuring site for our wind and temperature data and the like, and then that's like headed right in that direction. So, you know, if anybody's at Palatka Airport there and they see a funnel cloud or something more than that even, but, you know, then just make sure you're calling that into the weather service immediately so they can, you know, determine if they need to issue a thunderstorm warning with tornado possible tag or a tornado warning even if something's really ramping up. But, so if you're there at the Palatka Airport, if for some reason you're watching this covered, make sure you're calling the weather service in Jacksonville if you're seeing something, letting them know, you know, if you're seeing a funnel cloud with this, as this is coming in toward the Palatka Airport. As we're continuing to watch things there for sure. So, again, just continue to track this there toward Putnam County. Okay, they're telling us the weather service in Jackson is going to drop the warning up here at 5:45. I know it's already off the map, but they're saying they're dropping that here. So that'd be the first time we haven't had a warning here around in our area in a couple hours. Let's see, I mean, first warning got issued at 3:33, so yeah, it's been a while here. We've been busy with all this here as we're tracking things, as we're monitoring things here this afternoon, so. Still don't lay your guard down because these are still pretty strong. May still get more warnings as I've indicated. Got quite a bit of lightning around heavy rain and the like. You know, some of these areas, I mean, around Stark, granted we don't have as much moisture, but they're still 89 degrees. You know, as we continue to watch and as we continue to track. Let me put the instability on. You see there's more instability toward the coast here. We haven't really showed this to you today, but purple's 4,000 joules per kilogram of instability, unstable air. You know, and the red still over 3,000, orange about 2,000. And that's, you know, some of these areas we have quite a bit less toward like Stark around that. Even Ocala, there's not near that much. So it's always interesting to watch the variety here and the variability. You see some of this here out toward the west, a little over 3,000. Some of those could start to get a little bit stronger. Once you start getting in the red, is when I'd say it's a little more likely to get some warnings, you know, in terms of these, if you have the storm accident around or can get some more to develop, then it can ramp up a little bit quicker and get a little bit worse. But, okay, so we're looking here at the latest report. Did you get a reporter on First Coast High School in Jacksonville in the Ocean Way area at about 4:10 p.m. of nickel-sized hail. So that came on out. That's a report. Let me go ahead and keep looking at things and keep tracking things here. Still watching pretty strong winds around Palatka, you know. Not necessarily a warm situation yet, but definitely could have. It's a little displaced in the pixels, but you know, further away on the radar anyway. Let me check the Melbourne radar. I know it's kind of far too, but further, but still, it's actually still on rotation. Wow, I'm surprised that it's doing that much. I know that's kind of high up. You know, not really where you're looking, but that's over 13,000 feet on the Melbourne radar. It's on some tight rotation there. Makes me think we could have a funnel with this. So coming into the Palatka area. Doesn't mean we'll actually have any type of warning even needing to be required, but to the Tampa radar, I'm curious to see what it's showing from that height. Now Melbourne's got a shear marker. This one doesn't show a shear marker, but it says rotation at 16 or so thousand feet. I wish we had Moody for the other opinion on it. It would be a little bit better. This here's from over 20,000 feet in Tallahassee. It's also showing some strong winds aloft with that. As we're looking here, this is all the way up the Tallahassee radar to Palatka, which is really far, but nothing else. There could be a downburst there, wind, a burst of wind down toward the surface, because this is only 4,000 feet up, and it's showing something with this. I'm going a little bit higher, if you wonder what I'm doing here. I'm pretty surprised they haven't issued a warning on this, to be quite honest. I would issue a severe thunderstorm warning with a tornado possible tag on this based on everything I'm seeing. Especially based on the history of what happened down there in North St. Johns County earlier into the coast, the damage around Butler Beach and the like. As we go out, you know, with the report, if you're joining me, I know it was before we had any warnings in play, but we did get a report there of several power lines and trees down in Butler Beach. No structure damage or power outages, meaning power lines, you know, could have still been live, but you know, it's just a nasty situation overall over there toward Butler Beach. Crescent Beach also, you know, they had 56 mile an hour gust in that area, plus the funnel cloud. So, see St. Augustine and the like, but then down the coast to Crescent Beach and Butler Beach. That's what I'm talking about earlier on. We do have a tornado vortex signature now on our radar, and nothing's really changed on the velocity scan from what I was just talking about. I'm going further up, by the way, if you're wondering what I'm doing. And the tilts. I really wish we had a Moody radar, because that would probably give us a better look, but sometimes when you have some interaction here with things, you can have some issues. Let me see that boundary. Let's see if that boundary just, I don't know, can't really tell, but we have different boundaries that can, you know, get involved here with the storms and cause things to spin up, or, you know, even if it's a little brief. I'm going to do something here. Weather stem. I can't pull up the camera. I just want to do the camera in that area that I can look at. If there's something out near the airport. Okay, I don't really see anything right off. If it's going to happen, it'll probably happen pretty quick. So if it doesn't happen next few scans, in terms of like rotation. I don't know if it'll really happen, but yeah, we don't have any Florida 5-1 cameras in that area. You know, similar story to like what here in Bradford County, we don't have any we can go to. We have our own camera, but it's not looking that direction. It is too far away. I mean, just so down there with the way where the storm axis is. So. Let's see if I can pull anything up on it, but yeah, not really looking at things there. Just if there's any reports out of that airport, I'd be curious. Let me just go ahead. I'm sure, you know, they can report stuff in their METARs. I mean, 10 minutes ago, well, 10 minutes ago, they actually had a pretty nasty little gust. Let's see. I'll put that on the system view then. Set up, there we go, 39 miles an hour as we were looking at that. So, thunderstorm in the vicinity, 34 knot gust, 39 miles an hour, tropical storm force gust, but 81 degrees. The temperature. We'll go back on shear rate. This is the history on shear rate. But this is the current scan, which is a little weaker, which would kind of indicate to me that if we had anything, it's probably starting to kind of, you know, break up a little bit by now. But we still have to stay weather aware. Let's watch toward I-95. Some heavy wind action there. Not severe, but west of Crescent Beach. You know, that doesn't look really impressive, but I can pull a traffic camera up over there. So let's try to do that. As we're looking at things and as we're tracking things. I know Putnam advisory now 6:30, 55 mile an hour winds possible there. So that's information just going in. Let me go ahead and pull this traffic camera up west of Crescent Beach there. Pretty nasty, not severe officially, but some pretty nasty weather as we're looking at this right now on the perspective. Mile marker 305 and I-95 at State Road 206. Some folks, looks like even with their flashers on there because of the reduced visibility, you see some of the pond in the water on the roadway and the light there. This is west of Crescent Beach on I-95. Another storm in that area. We had a warning for the marine interest earlier on, and some damage there toward Butler Beach and the gust almost severe. Crescent Beach, there was never a formal warning for severe for the beach, but there's even also a funnel cloud reported. So we just got to be careful here with some of this activity. Just, you know, it's really tough sometimes here, you know, to see the stuff on the Doppler before it already produces. But as we go ahead and continue here, some wind enhancement right around the airport there in Palatka and Putnam County. But we have to have 4 national tornado warnings. Before I slipped off to that, let's look up toward NASA. The reason, you know, this accident is what we've been on for hours, 2 hours now. But we'll go to Alabama for the tornado warning. This is now around Scottsboro, so, you know, right there near the unclaimed luggage place there. We were just talking about them the other day for tornadoes, you know, with the warnings in play and the like. And now we have some along this line maybe trying to spin up there in northeast Alabama. Some of it's probably going to get in northwest Georgia, some of it's toward the Chattanooga area. You know, so we're even watching the interstate there, I-59, in northeast Alabama, northwest Georgia. Don't want to be driving on that stretch there. This is kind of dipping a little bit further south, you know, having to watch, you know, the accident, maybe even get closer toward the Atlanta TV market eventually. But Chattanooga there, you have some of this. This isn't as bad as what we saw the other day, but still, it's up there. Enhancement on the radar with the winds. Got 3 tornado warnings in play. 2 in Alabama, 1 for parts of Hamilton, Marion, and some other zones there as well in toward southern/eastern Tennessee. So, just got to be mindful of that. We have tornado warning in Texas. by itself. Looks like they might need to extend that. It looks like it's getting out of the warning there in Dickens County there. So that's something to watch. It's 4:52 Central Time out there, but 5:52, of course, in our area. We've seen our warnings go away, but I'm sticking a little longer on this because I didn't want to have to go off, you know, and then come right back. Because we've had these storms be, you know, right on the edge of still maybe needing a warning here. As we're tracking things this afternoon. Just gotta stay weather aware, obviously. Just gotta stay tuned. It's all about protecting you, your friends, your family. It still has a little bit of a notch on it. We're just checking the radar view. They did get another tornado warning in Texas now. Extending that off toward the east in Dickens County, Texas. You know, the velocity scan is impressive. The reflectivity not much different than what our storm was showing in Putnam, but the velocity is way, way, way more impressive out there, obviously, in the Lone Star State. That's kind of the wind mode of the radar, getting, you know, under the hood there like you would, and on your vehicle, you're kind of looking at the different things and inspecting what the storm's actually capable of, and the wind mode radar, which is velocity, whether it's storm relative based on the direction, or base, which is just more of the raw measurement of the wind per se, not necessarily based on direction directly. So again, just continuing to check things here. Just continuing to track things. I'm just trying to keep you safe. Keep you informed. Been with you a while. Getting a report now out of Duval County earlier on. There was apparently inch-size hail there around First Coast High School now, according to video evidence. A little bit of wind enhancement now just southeast of the airport. This is live view of the radar. West of Orange Park, watching that heavy downpour with some lightning. They have a delay in their softball game in Gainesville. Putnam County here, you see, watching the action there. We're watching that, a strong thunderstorm in toward that vicinity. As we continue to watch and continue to track. So it's got to stay on top of things, obviously, in toward the meteorology world. So important to just monitor things here, obviously. Just checking all my different sources. Just trying to stick with you a little bit longer with this. Again, we came on for Southeast Georgia, but we had to start talking about areas further south, obviously, for some development. Again, just kind of watching things here. Just looking here, taking account of the movement of the storm with the storm relative velocity. Base velocity there, just kind of looking more the route, but it's not that much different. But you obviously use SRV more when you're looking for a tornado, and then base velocity VV there for when you're looking more for straight line winds. So with no warnings in play, I hesitate doing this because I know second we go off, we'll get a warning on something here, and it's coming right into Palatka. You know, we could ramp down coverage and just stop the stream, or we could keep it going and just kind of ride things out. You know what? That's what we're gonna do. So we're gonna stop coverage and me talking. You know, that's what we do in more organized situations. A lot of time when stuff pops up like this, I like to just write it out and then just drop the stream. But with this just kind of hanging around like this, I have a feeling, you know, that there's at least a decent chance we could get another yellow box or two. So we're just going to leave the stream up here with the radar looping and then pop back in if and as it is warranted. So currently no warnings. We haven't had a warning about 15 minutes or so. You know, we've had warnings all really, you know, afternoon long since about 3:30, but not anymore here as of the last, you know, several radar scans. But we're going to pop back on as needed if needed. If we don't have to pop back in again, we don't get any more warnings, you know, locally here we won't. As the wind number just went down a little at Palatka Airport, but they're in Putnam County. But if we need to pop back in, we'll be here with you at once to protect you, your friends, and your family, obviously, in these type of inclement situations. And we're on all the different platforms: Facebook, there, Twitter, /X, YouTube, and Twitch. But I'm gonna just leave this up here, and we'll pop back in if it is warranted. You know, if it is warranted, we will pop back in, obviously. But right now, I'd call more strong storms and severe. But again, we'll be back on at a moment's notice if we need to here. If something ramps back up. It's not a tornado situation, so really we're not really obligated to even stay on, you know, with this as long as I have. But we have had funnel clouds reported, so some of these storms. So we still want to be very, you know, vigilant here and cautious with what's going on here. You know, talking about funnel cloud reports in our area. One in St. Johns County, one in southeastern Georgia. So that's just, you know, pre-stages of tornadic development. So as we're kind of looking, or you know, potential of that there happening is, I'll put these, you can see just if you look real carefully, a little bit of tornado parameter there at points near the coast. Not a whole bunch, but a little one. Now we're Putnam County where we had that spin, ironically, as you saw there for a second. But by the way, there's now a confirmed tornado into ward the Dickens, Motley County, Texas storm. So we'll be watching the national storyline too. But we're going to leave it up on a local view. We're going to wind down coverage for now. We'll be back as warranted. You know, of course, try to enjoy that Memorial Day weekend, what's left of it here. Stay safe. You know, I know there's all those different remembrances and the like coming up tomorrow. As we're looking, the weather looks pretty good tomorrow morning at least. So, you know, in terms of not too much precipitation around. So that's good. Didn't see too much in our area based on the current model guidance and the runs. Things can always shift around a little because they've had some trouble lately, but it looks good. In the morning, still could be a little on the warmer side, though, still. So make sure, you know, folks that maybe aren't used to being outside as much, gotta make sure you're drinking plenty of water and the like. That'll do it for now. Stay tuned, stay safe. We'll be back here as warranted. May have to pop back in, you know, tomorrow as well, depending on how things transpire. But could even be tonight, depending on what happens. Thanks for tuning in.